Okay, guys, so I am going to tell you about what happened and what was really the full, I guess you would say like a year catalyst that led to the whole no contact between me and my mother. So in December 2013, at this point, she and I had actually had a good 2.5 to maybe even 3 years of pretty much peace, which was good. Like I said in my last video, I did a lot of work on myself. I had really come to start to accept her more, and we had this very polite relationship. And I think what you always just kind of hope is that your parents, when you're in that kind of a situation, that your mom will be okay with that, that it could be a long-term thing. But I knew with my mom, it wasn't. I knew it wouldn't last forever. So December 2013, it was just starting to build up. And I think part of what was starting to build up was the fact that I was getting healthier, and the healthier I was getting, actually, the more uncomfortable she was with me, the more she felt like I was pulling away from her, because, borderlines are all about abandonment issues and stuff. And so she started to feel like, like, for example, I wasn't criticizing her like I used to. I wasn't feeding into the drama. And so in some way, me not feeding into the drama made her feel like I was abandoning her. So anyway, so Christmas 2013, Christmas Eve, I was sitting down with her, and we were talking about one of my siblings who had just a really, really difficult year. And I have learned to never, ever, ever, ever criticize her for anything, or bring up any kind of like real feedback on, parent, my siblings, because she takes that all incredibly personal. So understandable. I acknowledge that. I honor that. I don't. So anyway, so we were talking about my brother, and I thought, oh, well, I'll bring up this website that's about, about personalities. So she can see, that my brother's got, some personality traits that, you kind of have to work with and be honorable to, and, and that could help her, So anyway, so she was eager, and so we looked at this, website together. And at the very end, the website says, for this personality, you really need to support them and be absolutely consistent with your support no matter what. Excuse me. And she said, well, we are. And I said, okay, well, there you go. She's like, but that doesn't solve the problem. She's like, why are we still having problems? And of course, in my head, I'm thinking of a million reasons why they're still having problems, but she can't understand that. She can't comprehend that, because I understand she's an emotionally ill person. So I just said, I don't know, that I'm just showing you what the website says, that's it, and I get up to go, and she just went for it. It triggered her rage. And as we know, rages are super fun. And she just said, you need to be sitting here talking about this with me. And of course, I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like, you guys said you've got it all covered, so there's nothing left for me to say. I should probably get going. Because I always will try to make an excuse at that point to use the bathroom or do something to leave the room before she goes into a rage. And I didn't get to. And she was like, no, we're going to have it out, and so she went into a rage for about 2.5 hours on Christmas Eve, at night. Everyone's trying to sleep or go to bed. And she's screaming at the top of her lungs with me. And, she would do, it kind of went to her normal things. Like she grabbed objects she was ready to throw at me. And I had to say to her, you do not assault me. You're not allowed. And she just spent the rest of the time yelling at me about the relationship and how awful, how hurt she was by me, how awful it was, and why couldn't I just let her in to my heart? Why couldn't I open my heart to her, and all of that stuff? And of course you wish that you could just talk it out and be open about it, but as well as I do, when it comes to a BPD, anything you say, it's going to be either criticized, denied, or just used to be thrown back into your face. I mean, that really isn't the point. The point wasn't for her to rage. Her raging wasn't for me to actually, help her solve the problem. She just wanted to get it out, and she just wanted to take it out on me. I mean, that's just what it is. Rages are fun that way. So anyway, so after 2.5 hours of that, I was trying to figure out if I should grab a cab at that point, because it was about 2 a.m. And when I was trying to figure out what to do, and honestly, I'm a spiritual person, so I prayed about it, and I just kind of really felt like I was supposed to stay. And I was like, okay, so of course, Christmas Day is awful. I'm sick to my stomach from the stress from the night before. And she's cold, of course, and we're all there with the kids celebrating and opening gifts, and it's so sickening. Anyway, so I was flying out on Christmas Day, because that's always what I do, because I spend half my day there, half my day with my life. And so anyway, I got her a gift, and for Christmas before I got there for the visit, and I just made sure I gave it to her before I left, because I thought, you know what, this might actually, I already knew then, it might be actually the last time I see her. And so I gave her the gift, and and she just changed. So weird. And all of a sudden she was really loving to me and warm, and it was just weird. Anyway, so I flew out, and that day, and she's leaving me loving texts, and I was just like, I need time to process and chill out. So I did. I took a few days to settle down, and I decided that I needed to email her and just be honest about myself. And I said, I shut down during the argument. I said those arguments, because obviously I don't call them rages to her, because that won't help the situation. But I just said, our arguments are the most destructive, hurtful things that ever happened in my life. I said they never end up anywhere healthy or good, and I was just honest, and I just said, look, I can't talk to you during those, and I don't think they're meant for me to talk through things anyway. I said those are times when I said, honestly, I can't do this. And I can't remember exactly all that I said, but basically I addressed it. So I knew that this would kick off what was probably what could lead to me eventually going no contact. So it was really a very direct, very honest email, and I always and I ended it with saying, I do love you, and that will never change, but I can't be in a relationship with someone if this is how the interactions are going to be. So anyway, and then she responded back to that with I will never go to therapy. There's nothing wrong with me. You're the one that's got all the problems, because you're the one who won't open up. So anyway. So at that point then I started the whole not communicating with her, and started to separate myself. So I first started by just not calling them or texting or anything like that. I would talk to my dad, because my dad and I have a pretty peaceful relationship because he is really passive. So I would talk to him just to keep up with the kids, because I have a bunch of younger siblings, like way younger siblings. And, just, kind of hear how they were doing and stuff like that. And we wouldn't talk about my mom, which was great. But was challenging, of course, for him, because he lives with her. They've been married now for like 40 years. So anyway, so I had this so that was fine. And that, and so I think she just thought that this was going to be another one of those, like, oh, we had a bad holiday. It's going to be 5 months before I hear from April, and it'll be fine. We'll get back to it. And it wasn't. I wasn't okay. I was done, And so, anyway, so Mother's Day, though, I couldn't resist. I did text her a happy Mother's Day, just a text. And, she had also called me, like once, I think, before that, and tried to talk to me, and I was very calm. I was very polite, and and afterwards she texted me, and it was awful, and and I just ignored it. I was just like, I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to get involved. Like, this is just not worth it. So anyway, so then May, I sent her a happy Mother's Day text, and she wrote back and said, I miss our relationship. And I said, I miss it too. And then she proceeded to write, I think it's like 20 text messages about our entire relationship. So I knew it was on. I knew it was time. I really didn't want it to go. It was like, this is it. This is it. This is the time to see if we're going to be able to continue to go back to being a polite relationship or not. And so through the course of a couple of weeks, she would text me, I would text her back, and it was just very clear. Like, I was trying to keep, I never, again, I always followed my skills. I never criticized. I didn't anything like that. It was definitely her criticizing me and attacking me and going, what's wrong with you? Why can't you just love me? And it's like, I do love you. I just can't be what you want me to be. I can't be that super close daughter. And I wish that you could just accept that, and she's like, I can't. And the reason why is because blah, 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 blah. So anyway, so at last it came to what I have seen is very common for people who go no contact is, the ultimatum. The ultimatum finally got put out there by me. And I think this happens for every child of a borderline who ends up eventually going no contact, is they have the ultimatum. And so the way it came out for us was, you see, my grandmother on her side, her mom, is also borderline personality. Ironically, it's my mom who told me that she was borderline, so anyway. So I brought up during our last few texts that maybe the reason why she had such a hard time with me was because she might have had some rough moments with her mom. And I said, maybe talking to someone about that would be helpful. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, I know you had a rough, you and grandmother didn't have the greatest relationship growing up. It wasn't, it was horrible. It was awful. I listened to it as a kid, so I know she had an awful relationship with her. I said, I wonder if maybe some of your experience with her influences the way you see me and our relationship. I said, and I said, my therapist and I have talked about that. And she's like, well, what did your therapist diagnose me as? And I said, and I did not go there, because that, like, for some, you can't tell a BPD that they're BPD. It just doesn't work, So I said, no diagnosis, just wondering, it's common for, problems to kind of pass down. And she wrote back and said, I'm done. I'm done. She said, your therapist is off. You're off. This is all your fault. And there's nothing wrong with me. And that to me was the ultimatum. If someone can't even acknowledge that they're doing anything wrong. She did say she was sorry. She said she was sorry plenty of times. But the thing was that she didn't even understand what she was apologizing about. And if she would even say that, like, I don't I've said I'm sorry, and I don't understand, but I don't even understand what, what's wrong, it was, again, that whole, like, don't you see how you're hurting me thing. And so, I just realized that, like, not only was she in that place of not being able to take care of, of ever to acknowledge me, she didn't even want to get the help to do it. And it was really interesting as I sat there looking at that text message that had just come in that said that I'm done. It was just peace that came over me, like a real sense of peace. And I just knew in that moment it was over between her and I. And, at least for now, I don't know. Maybe, if she got therapy, it would help. And I'll talk about that in my next video, but I just had peace. I really did. I knew it was done, and I knew I was ready for it, because, like, in my previous video, I said, I had prepared. I didn't prepare with this whole idea that I would go non-contact with her, but I knew that I needed to be willing to do no contact if I needed to in order to take care of myself. And without a doubt, by the end of my conversation with her, I knew that the only way I was going to be able to move forward in my health is by letting her go. So, yeah. So I'm already at 18 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and do the next video about what was life like after no contact. So